Welcome, everybody. It's another Wine and Comics Pairing Show live stream. As always, I am Dave, and with me today is
Dallas, of course.
Dallas, of course. And a few announcements before we get started before we bring our special guest star on for today. And we have a unique conversation we're going to have today, because for once, it's not going to be a Kickstarter. It's going to be something else. But first, a couple things that we have going on. We do have our very first Kickstarter for Wine and Comics Publishing. We are bringing back, you'll see the little ticker at the bottom, the banner scrolling. That is ArmageddonQuest.com. Armageddon Quest, the first issue of a long, out-of-print 1980s underground comics classic by Ronald Russell Roach, my favorite comic of all time to this day. I got to read it briefly in the 90s when it had its, you might want to call it a moment of fame. I don't even think it got that, really, but it was published at one point in time, quickly went out of print. I read the whole thing. It is the story of a reluctant Antichrist. It is by Ronald Russell Roach. If you like the original Eastman and Laird's black and white Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, if you like Robert Crumb, believe it or not, those two things do go together in this comic. If you like any of those underground black and white classics from the 80s, this is the comic for you. Issue number 1, 52 pages. We have multiple new covers. We just broke through our first 2 stretch goals. We are going to do a little bit of an ad read in the middle of the show where we're going to walk you through all the details of that. But if you'd like to go check it out to begin with, the little QR code in the corner, feel free to use that, or just head over to ArmageddonQuest.com. But for now, let's go ahead and play our snazzy opening and then bring on our special guest for the big conversation today. Welcome, everybody. Frankee White to the Wine and Comics Pairing Show, the writer of Who Killed Sarah Shaw, a Patreon exclusive webcomic. We're going to talk all about that, why a Patreon exclusive webcomic and how it's going and what this comic is all about. But Frankee, welcome. How you doing today, my man?
Good. Thank you guys for having me. And before we even get started on Who Killed Sarah Shaw, I want to just say that I was a day one backer for Armageddon Quest. I love underground comics. So when I saw those ads coming out, I was like, this is for me.
Thank you.
All right. I'm drinking to that. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I guarantee you, if you like underground comics, I mean, this thing is, God, I can't wait for a whole new people to read this comic. It has been one of those things where I've gone like 20 years of my life. Every time I have a conversation, when people ask you, like, what are your top 3, your top 5, your top 10? And I get down to like my true like top 5. And this one's always like at number 1. And everyone's just like, it's not even like, because a lot of times they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of that, but so many people haven't read it, but they know what you're talking about.
Always a blank stare.
It's just blank stare. And I'm just like, I can't even talk about why it's so cool.
But they're always intrigued by the title. They're always intrigued by the title.
It reminds me of like an old 80s board game title, like Armageddon is like a Power Quest or something.
Fireball Island, Power Quest, whatever those things are. Emerald Quest. 100%. But in any event, let's actually, you are not new to me as a creator. I actually, very randomly, a couple of years back, I bought all of 20 Fists digitally on like Comixology. It just looked cool. It was one of those like new release things where I was scrolling down through the thing and I was like, oh, this looks nice. A 3-issue miniseries, guys. That one I can highly recommend. It is available digitally on Amazon Comixology, or probably, I'm assuming, elsewhere. There are a few other things like Comics App and Global Comics. It's maybe there as well. Frankee, you can correct us if it's not in those other places.
That Source Point Plus handled all the digital releases for it, so it's probably wherever they could put it out.
Wherever you can find Source Point. And I know Source Point has a website where they sell everything digital as well, so you can probably just go to Source Point website. And before we get a little started, we do have Blake Thomas Morgan. It's a great book. $1 a month, such a deal. He's talking about Frankee's book, Who Killed Sarah Shaw. Yes, $1 a month gets you access to the whole book. And again, we're going to get into that. But quickly backtracking for just a second, 20 Fists I was familiar with. I have backed also The Amber Door. I haven't read it yet, but mother of God, what an awesome looking and intriguing anthology title. So I mean, that won me over on like day one. If you look at that cover and the basic pitch for that comic and it doesn't win you over, probably not for you, but go check it out. because it won me the fuck over. Now I finally have read almost all of what's available of Who Killed Sarah Shaw. We got, me and Dallas were able to read up to page 68-ish, I believe. And it's already up to the low 70s. What's the posting schedule for the Who Killed Sarah Shaw?
So it's usually once a week on Tuesdays, unless Adam gets his days mixed up. So like today I saw the email go out and it was like, hey, page 74 or 3 is up. And I was like, all right, like I'm just going to start posting it. Like, don't tell me to take it down. Like, let's just, whatever, let's post it today, right? Usually Tuesdays though at 11 Central Time.
Okay. So 1 page per week.
One page per week. Yeah. We're considering going up to 2 pages, but right now we're going to stick with 1 page a week. That way we don't want to rush Adam or anything. He's doing a great job on the art. We don't want to start trying to kick it into high gear at the end just to rush through.
So folks, that's like 25 cents a week on a short month. And then even a little bit less than that if it's like that, one of those 4.5 to 5 week months.
Or a damn good story too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Before we get to the story though, so Frankee, tell us a little bit about yourself just as a creator. How did you become a writer? Why comics? Why did you dip your toe into this? Is comics your first place you've been a writer, or have you dabbled in other mediums?
Yes.
Give us your background on that.
So I have been wanting to be a writer, I'll say that, since I was like a little kid. Like growing up, I drew comics on loose leaf paper at home. I was doing all my bootleg Dragon Ball Z comics and things like that. And then I went to college, got an English degree. Realized I can't make money with that, so I didn't like go into like a writing profession, right? Like as my first job, I do have an actual job, like working, because I cannot pay the bills being a writer. Unfortunately, that's I think the realization for most of us
in the world, right?
Yeah. But in that process of going to college and getting that degree, so I was not just writing comics. I didn't start just writing comics, writing short stories, writing poetry. I had 2 poems published, in the Kurt Vonnegut Memorial Libraries anthology series, things like that. Took my hand at writing a novel that will never be released ever. That's like one of those things where you read it and I was like, yeah, this is amazing. And every once in a while when I need a humble check, I go back and look at it and I'm like, damn,
and remember you thought it was amazing. Always reality check yourself.
Finish that first, once you're done, your immediate reaction to this is the greatest thing that's ever been made. No one's ever going to top this.
Right. I mean, it's such an accomplishment though. Prose novels, like to finish one, it is like you
just to finish it,
no matter. Yeah, exactly.
It's still, it's not good though, so it'll never get released. And then like while I was writing other things, I started to get back into comics. I used to read comics a lot when I was younger, and then fell out of them. I used to read a lot of manga, especially when I was like in grade school, and then I got into high school and kind of got into that like, oh, it's too cool. Like I'm too cool to read that stuff. Like I don't want to do that. And then once I was in college, I was like, that was fucking stupid. I'm going to go back and read the things that I want to read. And so I started getting back into, weekly comics, starting when New 52 started at DC, started getting back into manga. And once I was reading those regularly, it kind of just became like I'm writing these short stories. I'm writing, these poems and longer form, novel style works, novellas, things like that. I was like, why not write comics too? Try it out. It's a form I like. And also, not to sound like a lazy writer, but part of it is like you get to collaborate with somebody who can help you bring your vision to life. That is more gratifying than writing it yourself. Like writing a full page describing a room versus like having Adam draw the room and then I get to see it visually, like is more gratifying to me as like someone who needs constant, like I need it. I'm not a patient person.
When I feel like once you've done like that full novel, now no one's going to read, you're like, okay, I want something that like everyone's going to see. And, we can confidently put it out there into the world, and getting an amazing artist to work with you on something, I think it helps a lot of writers just get past that doubt. Even if you still have some doubt with your story, you look at what an artist is doing with it and you're like, worth it. Let's just get it out there.
All throughout comics history is artists propping up writers. Like very rarely is it the other way around.
The other way around.
I read a comic and I go, dang, the art sucked, but the writing was really good. Like, it's not something I commonly see. You know, no offense to my other writers out there, like that. Like that's not like, you know, it's not a common occurrence.
Dallas, are you saying they're all offended?
They're all offended. Trust me.
They're all offended. Yeah, too late. Like, fuck this Frankie White guy. So for the so you're getting into comics, and this is, you did 20. Is 25th, Amber Door, and now Who Killed Sarah Shaw your third? Am I missing?
No, there's gaps. So I started off originally doing shorts. Another reason I like comics is that a comic can be a one-pager. So I love doing like one-pagers, just as like a writing exercise and getting to team up with artists who maybe don't have like the availability to do more than a page, you know, or something, you know, things like that. So when I first started, I did a 13-page short called Gone Fishing. Then I started doing a webcomic called Wolf on Vacation. That is a story that's like it's kind of like a BoJack Horseman meets like Criminal Minds sort of thing, where it's anthropomorphic animals in the vicious town of Ice Cream City, and a wolf goes on vacation and basically causes mayhem. And while this wolf is causing mayhem on vacation, a turtle named Shelly, who's a detective, has to figure out what's going on and stop him.
Like an adult Zootopia.
Yeah,
almost.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
Like an R-rated Zootopia. I like that.
Yeah.
It was a fun thing. The artists I worked with that were really good. We never got to finish it. Just the way webcomics kind of go sometimes is you think of too much stuff and the story gets too big and it just keeps going and it just keeps going. And eventually artists will be like, hey man, this was supposed to be this amount of pages and now it's this, like, I can't keep doing this. And then I'm like, man, I just keep going. Like, this is like, how are we gonna wrap this up? So that one kind of like ended abruptly with like about a chapter or two left. But then once that finished, I met Adam. I started working on Broken Bear, which is our first book together, which is a dark fantasy about a squire who kills her the night she's with, basically, in exchange for his abilities. And so it's about her doing this terrible act and then learning to live with what she did and trying to now find new purpose in life after doing this terrible thing and now living with the guilt of it.
That's Broken Bear is the title, yeah?
Yeah, Broken Bear. Yeah. And so that was with Adam. That was the first time I ever worked with him. And we have AHG, who did the colors for that, who is usually our constant color companion on a lot of our books. Meanwhile, while we were working on Broken Bear, I started 25th, so I was working on those simultaneously. Gotcha. Then in 2020, during COVID, I did I call it a zine, but it's not really a zine. It's like I worked with like 30 plus artists where basically every artist got like a page to a couple pages each, depending on what it was. And it was essentially the last episode of a mech anime series, like that you never heard of before. So like every
I remember artist, this. Yes.
Artist got you know, a pin up, or they maybe got like 2 or 3 pages that were consecutive parts of the story. I would do character profiles. So it was all of this stuff in like an 85-page book that told like the end of this story while trying to fill you in on all the backstory through like journal entries and character profiles, like as much as possible. Yeah. Then after that, me and Adam teamed up again for Eat My Flesh, Drink My Blood, which came out through Dauntless Stories. Thank you to them for helping us make that, because I don't think any publisher would let us. It's a 50-plus page romantic horror novella. And the first half of it kind of plays out like a romance. And the second half is like, everybody's nude. They're sacrificing people. So you mentioned the last.
Good, clean fun.
Yeah, good, clean fun. Yeah. So we wanted to go as hard into it as possible. And, you know, we have just like the back 30 pages is everybody's naked. There's no clothes anymore. Like they're all sacrificing people. That is one of my favorite things I've ever written. It's what I live for when I'm a writer.
And that was an illustrated prose novella, correct?
No, so it was a graphic novella, like comic page. The way we did it was like almost like a triptych. It was 3 panels per page. And if you're reading a PDF, it almost reads like a webtoon
like
sort of format where you scroll straight through. But the physical book of it is like magazine size, so it's huge book. So there's these huge widescreen panels. We wanted it to look like a movie.
So give everybody the title and location again.
Eat My Flesh, Drink My Blood. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it directly from the Dauntless website, dauntlessstories.com. Our first print and the hardcover sold out. We're on our second print, but Heather Vaughn did the cover for the second print, and it's amazing. If you follow me on social media, you've seen me post about it like a billion times. I like never shut up about it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know Dauntless did when they were first starting out. I backed a couple, or you don't call it backing, but they did the whole pre-order thing to bring these stories to life on their website. And I knew a lot of those were illustrated novella/novel type works and type projects, which I really enjoyed. So I was wondering if that was predominantly their shtick, but they do all sorts of things.
It's all different stuff, like graphic novels, one shots. I know the illustrated novella was, I think, Easton DeVerna, who does comics too.
Yes.
So they do everything. If a good idea comes their way, they jump on it.
They'll give it a shot. Yeah, very cool. And so how did you and Adam meet? Because you've done a couple of things together now.
So it's thank you, social media. It was one day I was like, hey, I have this idea for a short. Originally Broken Bear was just going to be I think it was like a 10 or 13 page short. I was like, hey, I have this idea for a fantasy short.
I see a recurring theme with you and your writing here.
Any artists out there that want to do this? And Adam jumped on. I saw his stuff. I was like, this is amazing. Like originally it was going to be a black and white short. Then after we did the first 13 pages, we were both like, hey, you want to keep going? Like, so we kind of like turned it into it. So the way it works, it's a graphic novel, but the first chapter is like a short. The second chapter is another short. And then the last 3 chapters are like essentially like standard comic length, monthly comic length issues.
All right. Very cool. So let's get into the Patreon and how you guys decided to do this particular project at this point in time. So why Patreon? It's really cool to do a exclusive webcomic that posts regularly. I mean, a lot of artists, when they have their Patreons, they're like, oh, you'll get exclusive content in the Patreon.
Right.
And they might do shorts here and there or some little like behind the scenes, like here's a version of the story that no one's ever seen because it was not good enough. And, I redid it and that's the one that the public saw. So you can get a lot of behind the scenes stuff, but this is the first, I'm pretty sure I've heard of someone true blue chronicling, like you're getting a page a week, maybe in the future, more than 1 page per week. And this is the way everyone's going to get this comic is by being a patron. And $1 is just an amazing entry fee for that. So where did this brainchild come from and what made you want to try this experiment?
So I originally had the idea for Who Killed Sarah Shaw, and I was tinkering with it, trying to see what it would be. Maybe it was a novel, maybe it was a graphic novel, whatever it was. We were wrapping up Eat My Flesh, Drink My Blood. Adam was in between projects, and I was in between projects. And after a while, I was like, you know what? Like, I just like working with Adam. So basically, it was like, hey, if you're down, what we can do is like, we'll do this through, because he already had a Patreon running, and he was talking about, and he was actually running a comic through his Patreon with another person. So he was already kind of doing that, like a weekly update of like, and it was in a sort of like Sunday strip style format. So it was like these kind of like big wide pages. And so we were talking, and I was like, well, he was finishing that up, and I was like, well, if you want to do that again, like, I have this idea. Let me send you, the script that I have currently. And when I work with him, I never have it all done in advance. I like to I have the outline, and the outline will always change. But in terms of like the actual script, I like to like lay the tracks down as Adam is the train approaching me. So it like lights a fire under my ass to like make sure I'm like keeping up and doing like a good job and editing it constantly versus like doing it all and then sitting in on it. And then, so I'm always like micro editing as I go. So basically once we decided to do that, we we're like, let's run it through there. Adam's monthly Patreon fees were already really low. So I was like, let's just do $1 to get in. And then he has a $5 like super patron thing, which you'll get basically everything again, but it's like, hey, support an artist for $5 a month. He's already giving you
great idea.
a free comic and other art and behind the scenes stuff. And, you know, if you read Eat My Flesh, Drink My Blood, or even Who Killed Sarah Shaw, we love throwing in nudity into stuff. So he draws nude portraits and everything like that. So if you're one of those people, you know, you get that too.
Fantastic. And how's it been? So, you know, this might be a really good moment. Let me try and share the Patreon screen here, because I do have it up. Let's see. Patreon. I have so many things open. All right, here we are. All right, folks. So you can see here, this is the artist Adam's Patreon. They are doing, we've got 356 posts in there, 60 members so far. You can become a member. You can become a member for free. Actually, that's a good question. I'm assuming essentially nothing actually. I know Patreon has unlocked this recently where like everyone can start following someone for free. Is there anything that comes with the free tier if someone started following Adam? Do you know?
The only thing I know for sure is that we made the first post for the book free. So if you went to like the very first page, you could see the cover and the first 5 pages free as a sort of like teaser to like, hey, if you like this, like if you like these, essentially the pitch pages, right? Like $1 will now get you more. And the longer it runs, the better of a deal it becomes. Now, I love everyone that joined on early because you're giving us a little extra income as it comes in and everything.
Right.
But for people that are joining on now, as we're starting chapter 4, you're getting like 70 plus pages for $1. And then everything else after that, right? You know, you're just helping pay. Right. Like it's a pretty good deal.
Exactly. So you're supporting that $1 a month, which almost everyone, I'm not going to say everyone, can afford to do and can. So if you like what you see, if you give the $1, read the 70 plus pages already available. And you can see, folks, we're going to go down here. This is the most recent post. It's locked because we don't have access to this. I'm actually going to join for the $1 tier as soon as this live stream is over. You know what? Why am I waiting? You just saw what it looked like locked. Now we're going to see what it looks like unlocked.
All right, don't put your credit card information up there, buddy. Calm down.
It's the last.
You want to just like double tap that, click change, so you can see the numbers real quick.
It's like, all right,
exactly. All right, we are in. Get started. So now, and so that's the whole damn thing. Membership for $1 a month, and it unlocks everything right away. So you're not paying $1 per page or anything like that. You're paying to just have access. Each month.
And Adam added a little nifty tech thing into his webpage. So if you go to like the most recent page and scroll to the bottom of like that widget, there's a first page, next page, last page sort of thing. So you can navigate through it. So you don't have to like actually scroll through it all. So like you can click.
Yeah, next page, previous page first. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. All right, cool. And they're up to page 73 on this Patreon for Who Killed Sarah Shaw. And then, of course, you get Casual Fridays. You get lots of bonus. That's a good title for this. You get lots of bonus content as well, because this is the artist Patreon as well. So it's not exclusive to the Who Killed Sarah Shaw webcomic. This is really cool. I have to say, this is, I support a lot of artists on Patreon. There's a number of them that I do it to support the artist. And yes, they give bells and whistles and some more so than others, but it's not really about like the bells and whistles too much. It really is just about, I like you so much as an artist. These are the ones I'm going to support. Right. This is a Patreon that I have to admit, the selling point of that whole webcomic is like, even if I was unfamiliar with Adam's work, which before reading and getting a preview of the comic I was, for the most part anyway, this would be something I'd go in for, at least to try. I mean, for $1, you can try it. So it's sort of like, okay, if I don't like the comic, I don't like the comic.
You can read 7 pages of a comic for $1, and if you don't like it, you just cancel your subscription.
Exactly. And so paid, and so you navigate it just like webcomic folks, or just scroll. More sexy. Oh, okay, whoop. Sorry. I don't know how much trouble we can get. I don't think so. We've had some pretty graphic stuff here.
Should be
on the YouTube channel. We should be okay. But last drawing is 2020. So here you guys go. Full artist Patreon plus the entirety of the Who Killed Sarah.
This really is a great use of this platform. I have to say, it's really unique. I like it. To roll out the sort of extras and pull people into the universe of the comic.
Yeah.
I like this a lot.
Yeah, and for those watching right now, if you want to sound off in the chat, like, what do you think about this? Do you like it? Is it something? Are you already just considering it because of how cool of an idea? If not, what would it take to get you to consider it? Please sound off in the comments if you can be interactive and not just be passively listening to this. But if you are just passively listening, that's fine too. We do appreciate you listening.
And for a tip of $100, they'll draw a page with you in it. I'm joking.
We'll find an extra.
I know.
That's right.
I know. I was going to say, Frankie's like, well, actually, $100. I don't know. Well, let me consider that. All right. Very cool. And we will also, so, I was going to share images from the PDF, but I don't have to now that we're in. No. So we can just,
now you can even jump ahead.
I can even. Well, I am jumping. This was the final page we saw.
There we go.
Was page 66, which I will say, without giving away too much, like, it was the best end note. I believe this is.
That was a great punctuation all around. That was a great punctuation.
It is finishing off chapter 3 with a bang. It is a non-bang, as the case may be, in its way, or a bang to come. It was a great both character and story moment. Like, for I thought it was just kind of randomly end with what he sent us, because I was like, I think it's just however many pages he has so far. But when it ended on that note, I was like, oh wow, that was a great little pause moment. Like, that's your end credit sequence of a Marvel movie, but much dirtier, and it's that makes you want to come back for the next one, and makes you far more giddy to come back for the next one than you thought you would be. So, Frankee, question for you on this. Have you ever seen the original Swedish TV show, or Danish? Sorry, I think it's a Danish TV show, The Killing.
No, I haven't.
You haven't? Son of a bitch. So for those of you out there,
I know where you're going. Yeah.
This comic reminded me a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was going to be like a major influence for you. And, that's not to say this is like copying anything directly from the show, but the way it approaches a crime procedural, mystery crime procedural, is very similar in this sort of very down to earth way, and taking its time while still being intriguing as fuck. Yeah. I mean, it's just, and when I compare it to a show like that show, I think it was the late 90s. It originally aired overseas, and then got a little bit of a hit here in the States before we remade it here in the States.
Right, I remember when they remade it.
Yeah, late 90s.
Yeah. There is an American remake. I have not seen the American remake. I've only seen the original. The American remake was good. Like, it didn't get bad feedback, and it ran 4 seasons, I believe. I think the problem with the American remake is, unlike European television, which is really happy to just tell the story it's there to tell and then get out, and it doesn't just keep going season after season after season. It doesn't try to keep coming back forever. It's just like, or it'll do one season and then it's like, oh, now we've got a new idea 5 years later, now we'll do another season, then pause for another 5 years. Whereas American TV has got to be about every year, every season, go until people stop paying attention to it because the quality just isn't keeping up, and then the interest dies, and then the show dies. So that's I believe that's what befell the American show. Is by season 4, people were like, this has lost all its luster. We don't know where it's going. So they kind of gave up on it. But it is still considered in Europe as like one of the best crime television shows, like, of all time, like, in history. And it is a show that I've only seen season 1. Each season is its own standalone story.
Okay.
Characters cross over, but they don't. The mystery is one season full, and that season is all about that mystery, that crime. And the first season, which is the most well-regarded one, there's 3 seasons altogether for the European one. The other 2 are well-regarded, but not as much as number 1. And the thing that reminded me of Sarah Shaw so much is that, you know, a murder took place. It is seemingly like no one can really, it's seemingly unsolvable, but the more people dig into it, I mean, the red herrings just keep cropping up, and it's just like, this is suspicious, this is suspicious. But the most suspicious things always lead to a dead end. Like they were suspicious for some other reason, not for the reason that you thought it was going to be. And everyone's kind of a real person. It's not really, there's no super cops, there's no super detectives, there's no super journalists that are like better than anyone else in the story and in the show. The killers are, you know, the way in which they kind of get away with things are not because they're necessarily super masterminds either. It's all this very like, this is real life and it's complicated as shit. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's hard to figure out what happened and who and why, is because all of this shit, this community, this town, this everything are also interconnected, that the truth is never easy to uncover. And you just, yeah.
Real quick, Frankee, sort of a bit of a departure from this. Let's go back to the genesis of this piece. What was the sort of feeder here? What was the seed? Where did this idea actually pop up? What were the influences? Because it is really, to Dave's point, it's accessible in the sense that the characters are really sort of pedestrian, and they are often fumbling into leads and fumbling out of leads, which makes it, you know, really sort of exciting, because that's the entry point for the audience. So what was the sort of genesis of this piece?
So the genesis of the piece is, well, I love true crime. So first of all, I'm glad I didn't watch The Killing, because the way you described it, I'm like, damn it, that sounds just like what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, there are some similarities.
Way too influencing.
Yeah, wait until you're done.
Yeah, definitely don't watch.
Then you can treat yourself to it, right?
I try when I'm writing a specific thing, I try to like not watch the things that I think would influence me. So like if I'm writing like this is like a true crime story, I'm not going to watch drama true crime. So I watched a lot of actual true crime. I wanted to see like how do the people present this story, and like how do you get it, like trying to get in the mindset of like, oh, I'm going to tell this horrific story, and you have to balance this, you know, concept of like, I want to tell a really good story, I want to make money. Like, because you have to, you know, if you're doing those stories, you're trying to make money off of it too, but also be like sympathetic, and sometimes even not sympathetic. So I watched a lot of bad true crime too, like the A&E true crime that almost feels like you're just like taking a shovel to the body, like digging it back up to get more out of it, which I meant like literally is like a line earlier in the story. Like, so trying to wrap my head all around that, and then using that as like a vehicle to tell a murder mystery, and saying, all right, we're going to have these true crime people. The whole setup is their show is about to get canceled. So instead of doing the same old song and dance they normally do, where they will just show up, do their quick interviews, they put the creepy piano music behind it, and then they go, I guess we'll never know. Like, and they decide we're going to try and solve the mystery while we're here. If we do, they'll have to get us another season, or we can leverage it for something else, right? You know, if you solve a 40-year-old cold case, you're going to get some notoriety, some press out of that. Yeah. So it goes from there, and it's trying to interview all these people that have these connections to Sarah, and again, keeping everything grounded, right? They're not super detectives. In fact, they might not even be good producers of their own show. Like there are times they fumble across their own stuff. I like writing flawed characters. None of my characters are ever like perfect people. They constantly make mistakes. And I like writing real natural dialogue. So when you're interviewing these people, you know, whether it's Sarah's former best friend, their old basketball coach, you know, the police officer, Sheriff Mayberry, and Deputy Sheriff Higgins, which is kind of like a reverse interview. Technically, Jess and Dave are getting interviewed in that issue. In chapter 4, it's Mary Rainey, who is the wife of the presumed murderer, who has gone missing, who has left town 6 months after the death of Sarah Shaw. And then a mystery final person for the 5th chapter. I don't want to spoil that because that's a little bit of a fun tease. So the idea is like doing these individual stories of getting into the heads of these people, trying to remember events from 40 years ago, telling the best story they can, but also maybe they are hiding something. You know, that's the whole idea behind it. And if you're telling a story, I can't remember what I did last week and tell you 100% verbatim, perfect what happened. So when you're telling a story from the past, you're already not telling the truth. Like something has slipped a little bit, even if it's not malicious, something has already slipped off. So what I want the reader to do, and the title is a call to arms for the reader. Who killed Sarah Shaw? You guys should be trying to figure it out, right? Like read what they're saying, try and read behind the lines or between the lines and see, you know, hey, does this person seem suspicious? Let your inner detective come out, but also let your own prejudices come out. Like, are there people that are going to, you know, you're going to read and you're like, I don't like that fucking guy. Like he's the guy, like, cause I don't like him. I don't like what he did. I don't like, like I'm hoping when readers read it, you'll have a variety of different opinions as the story goes along on who they think did it, how it happened, how it all plays out, because I'm not trying to like essentially tell you, especially this early on. Right.
Yeah. I like when you first introduced the suspicion for the deputy, you know, it seems really suspicious, but then the more you learn about his past with Sarah, you're like, or it's just a really sore topic. Like like he is kind of heartbroken about it, and that's okay. That's a different thing. So I think you do a really good job of, as scenes progress and you learn more about characters or more about events, that the main two investigative podcasters, for lack of are they podcasters? Is that what you call them?
It's more like they work for a true crime streaming channel. So they like are like imagine like Netflix documentaries or something. It's like what they do.
Gotcha. So the documentarians, they are streaming documentarians. You know, we get things from their POV predominantly, so you can see that when they uncover something, it's so like you as the reader want to go eureka just like they are. Right. You know, in that heat of that moment. And then the more you learn, you're like, oh, or not. That's not really. Now I feel bad because now I feel for this other person that that was just under the highest suspicion. So, yeah, I think you're doing a really good job with laying that.
You also do a very good job of allowing the reader to discover the stories, as you said, with their own prejudices, their own sort of critical eye. And also sort of think ahead of the protagonist as well, which is a very difficult thing to do. So often, you know, audiences were led by the characters, and in this, I think you do a really good job of allowing the audience to kind of make some leaps, and then have those leaps sort of, you know, just fumbled and slapped around and
I hope that's what they're doing. I hope when they're reading it that they're I want them to actively engage with it. There's a lot of stuff that I read, things that I like, things that I don't like, that doesn't seem to be the call to the reader. It's kind of like you're just watching it to watch it. Like it's just not interacting with the work itself, not engaging with it. And this is one where I really want the reader to engage with it. Don't take everything at face value. Like, please don't. Like,
you know, even down to the relationship between the two characters. I'll tell you why that final page was so sort of satisfying in a weird way, is because leading up to that, we thought it was going in a totally different direction. And then to see the sort of parallel between those two characters play out after they get home right before this punctuation, and see that final punctuation play out, it's like, oh, okay. All right. The entire time the audience is reading that and thinking, all right, I know where this is going. And then you don't. So, yeah, good job.
I will also say when Adam says Jess's face in panel 2 is maybe the best face I've ever drawn. It's all downhill from here. And this is the panel right here. Now, I will say there, Adam, if you're watching, like you have a number of panels that have incredible, especially on her in specific. She, like, even just the page before, this little like side eye to the sheriff as he's like,
he gives good
give
side
her
eye.
the best side eye. Yeah, she's got the best fucking side eye in this thing. So definitely. And then we have.
He's a comedian. Like every comment on one of these pages is always a funny comment. There's never hardly any ever serious behind the scenes knowledge. It's always a joke.
That's good. That
And we
gives
got
dynamic to the world.
I like it.
Adam can bring the emotions. Yes, he
Yes.
can. And Blake has a question. You do write excellent dialogue. How do you hone that skill?
That is a good question that I don't know if I can actually answer, like, honestly. Like, I guess, like, I watch a lot of stuff, I read a lot of stuff, but when I write it, I like writing down to earth, real dialogue. That's probably like my biggest thing across everything I've written. I don't write like punchy, snappy dialogue like that. You might be able to easily just pull the page off and quote it. Like, and be like, this is a quote.
So does that come from, when you're outlining your world, your characters, if you outline, are you really intimate with your characters? Do you know them? Do you have, bios on them, or are they just sort of popping up as you go along?
No, I would say I get a base idea for it. And then as I start to write the script, then I start to figure out what their voice is. Basically, like, I'll know, like, okay, for example, Coach Isaac James, he's like an 80-year-old curmudgeonly pedophilic coach. Like, you get in and then you go like, all right, like, what does that guy sound like? And then you start to write it. And then that's why I was saying where, like, I like to write as Adam's coming, because I'll write a page, and then before I even go to the next page, I start reading the first page and I start to edit, like, and go like, all right, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right. This sounds great. Right. Like, expand on this, like, and do it that way. Okay. And I typically try to stay as natural as possible, which, like I said, is I like doing that from a promotional aspect. It leaves me a little hamstrung sometimes when I'm trying to pick pages, because there's no, sometimes people post like really good pages where it's like a great quote and image. You're like, oh, that's a good seller. Right. Because I write very naturally like this, and it even flows through the page like that.
Could you read all 10 of these pages? It's a great moment, but read 10.
This is why I'm not a good pitch person. Like, when writing pitch is my least favorite thing. I'm not a succinct person.
Well, this goes back to your stories keep expanding, and
right.
the page count keeps going. And that makes sense if you go for a more natural execution of everything, and you want, like, that does take time. You've got to have those pauses. You've got to have like more back and forth. People don't get to the point, that quickly. Like, that is not how people talk. It's not like, this is what you need to know. This is what I'm thinking. Now, what are you thinking? And what's your point? And it's like, that's not how people talk to each other. It's like, we wish sometimes that's how people talk to each other, but it's not. Yeah. All right. This is amazing stuff. So once again, guys, actually, anything else before I do a summary of the Patreon? Anything else you can think of that we haven't covered in terms of this Patreon, how it works?
I think
actually one question before that, Adam. What in terms of the plot, in terms of the future, how far along are we plotted out for this?
So the whole, this is one of the few times the whole story's done. Adam actually, like, we did the whole script. I got a little bit of the writing bug and got ahead of myself, and I've edited, and I sent Adam a couple weeks ago, like, my latest retweak of the ending of the book. And Adam told me to stop touching it because he's like, it's fun, like, it's good. Don't touch it anymore. Like, this is good. So I'm done. I'm not, even though I casually do go back into my Google Docs.
Of course you do. Of course.
I guess the biggest thing is I'm not done writing it until we're done. And Adam can.
That's a slippery slope there. Come on.
Adam can say this on his own if he doesn't like this or not. He never complains to me about it. But when he sends me like penciled pages, he'll do like the pencils, and then he'll like handwrite the letters in there so you can read it. And so when I'm reading it, I'll be like, this sucks. Like this doesn't flow like how I thought it was going to flow. Like, let's change it to this. Or even sometimes after I read it in the pencil, I'm like, yeah, it's good. And then I'll read it in the inks and I'm like, nah, this sucks. Like, and then I'll ask him to tweak it there. So like, it won't be done until the final page is done. But at this point, it's more like you're tweaking.
It won't be done until the final page is done.
Yes.
Okay, so we got another 1,000 pages coming, is what you're saying.
No, so it is at this point now. It's tweaking ticky-tacky little verbiages and
Right.
dialogue flow.
We'll circle back in like 2 years and see where you are.
Right.
This section, I will say, I do have.
Who Killed Sarah
ideas.
Shaw? Book 3.
Book 3.
I have
Come on the live
ideas
stream to talk about it.
I have ideas for Jess and Dave.
Okay.
In the future, if we get to it. But for Who Killed Sarah Shaw, there is an end to this book. It's chapter 5, so we're on chapter 4 right now. So there's only one more chapter after this one, and then this story is done.
All right. Beautiful.
Fantastic. And once again, guys, this is you see the link on the little ticker at the bottom scrolling on the screen. This is Adam Markiewicz's Patreon page. $1 gets you access to everything. Absolutely everything. And then if you love it and you want to support Adam more, he does have a $5 tier, which is basically you're being, as he says, a mega nice patron.
That's right.
Tier, and you're giving him that extra support. But $1 a month gets you absolutely everything if you want to see it to the end. And then maybe even if you really like what you saw and liked what you read, just stay on there, stay a patron. It's $1 a month, guys. Support an artist, support a talented artist. All right, let's go ahead and just stop the share. All right, cool. Dallas, do you want to get us started with
Actually,
what we're pairing?
I went first last time.
Did you go last? Did you go first last time? Okay, so it's me. All right, so for this guy, I had to go. It has we've already covered a little bit about like the feel of the story and how it has this. It's slice of life. It's down to earth. There's nothing there's nothing elevated, or not elevated is not the right word, but like it's not melodramatic genre, right? It's very real life drama genre in terms of the crime mystery thriller. So I really wanted something that, it couldn't be anything too punchy, too powerful. It needed to be something smooth, but at the same time, this is a thinking person's comic. Like, this is something where, as Frankee already pointed out, he really doesn't want you to take anything at face value. He doesn't want you to take what the characters say at face value. You're along for the ride with our main two protagonists trying to unravel who killed Sarah Shaw and what is happening, or what did happen in this town, who everyone is today. So you need a thinking person's wine to go with this as well. It can't be something too simple. It's not going to be a porch sipper. It's not going to be something you don't want to get too drunk too quickly also, because you got to keep thinking. You can't get to the point where you're just sort of like, wee, look at the pretty pictures. You got to stay thinking. So for me, I went for a white. I went for something that was refreshing. It's a white that I know you're in Chicago, Dallas is in New York, so you want to punch me in the face when I say cold weather because I'm here in LA, but it's cold for LA, motherfuckers. It's like, it has been all weekend. So you can drink this as a chilled white, even in cold weather. I would say even in Chicago, even in New York, you guys got your heaters on inside. Come on now. So you can go ahead and drink this, and that is going to be a Riesling. I really needed a Riesling with this, but this is also not there's a gentleness to the storytelling of this. It's punctuated at moments with something a little harsher or something a little, the great moment at the end of chapter 3 that me and Dallas both commented on, and where you sort of left us off there was like a little extra, like dramatic for our two main characters. You're like, aw, like this is okay. That was a little more gut punchy and a little more like, ooh, I'm feeling, but still in such a real way where like people are passive aggressive and not really talking to each other about something. And you're just like, and you just go with it. So I did pick a Riesling. I think ideally I sipped a Riesling that was like perfectly dry and perfectly like just austere. And that was good, but not quite. So I went with in this case, it's a Riesling from Mosel area in Germany, and they call it a fine herb, which is the status where there is some residual sugar left in it. It's off dry. It's a little sweet, but just a little. So it's not as austere as your dry Riesling. But it isn't like dessert wine sweet. It isn't even, how you can get the cheapy, I'm trying to get like Gewürztraminers or whatever, and maybe you don't, but if you do, you can get the cheapy Gewürztraminers where it's like, it's not actually quality wine. That's why they left the sugar in it, is like, because that's what's going to make you drink it. And in this case, it's fine-tuned. It's like just that touch of sweetness, that hits you. You taste the sweet, and then it disappears as quickly as it came. Like, it doesn't linger. It's not cloying. It's not heavy. And so you still get that light, refreshing quality to it. You get the complexity that puts you in that like literary mood, which is what I think you need to be in to read this graphic novel and read this story. And then that touch of sweetness just to keep things gentle, because it's not that heavy-handed. It's not that heavy-hitting in terms of, attacking you with anything. So I think off dry, ever so slightly sweet Riesling from the Mosel. They call it Feinherb. If anyone's going to remember any of that, feel free, or just rewatch the recording later. But that's my pairing, man.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Okay. Yeah. No, I see that. And curiously, we did not. How to say this? We're in the same realm.
Okay.
So,
is this going to be the
Frankee,
first time we pick the same basic kind of wine?
It's no, close, but
no.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're distant cousins.
It's going to happen. One day it's going to happen.
They're distant cousins. So, Frankee, I think what you've done.
I'd go for Gewürztraminer.
I think what you've done with this comic, with this piece, you guys have done with this piece, is you do get the same sort of feeling you get when you're watching one of those true crime kind of docudramas, documentaries, where you're just turning it on and you're waiting for it to take you on a curve, because there's a curveball coming. You don't know where it's coming from. I think Dateline NBC, their series, does it really great. A really great job in that genre. And you've taken that kind of essence and legitimized it in a very literary way. And the art as well, Adam's art does a great job of just sort of making you feel like you're on the team. Makes you feel like you're kind of in the world. We're running around to these crazy places with this group, seeing them make out as they're entering a building. You're like, Mom and Dad shouldn't be making out, but okay. It's kind of, it's like, that's weird, Mom. Could you put your hand back off Dad's lap? Thanks. But
well and present, please, guys.
Right. And so it was, because of that, it's a very accessible world. And it's, I used the term pedestrian earlier, and there are no negative connotations to that whatsoever. I quite literally mean just sort of a walk or trog through this world as they kind of knock down these leads. And the way they're doing it is also very pedestrian. They aren't necessarily emotionally involved in the data that they're hunting down.
Right.
It's clearly a selfish kind of pursuit, which I get the feeling that changes later on, especially with Jess. And because of that, I also chose a white. I chose a white that it's a medium sort of boldness. If you can use that term. It's very dry. It's moderate acidity. There's lots of citrus in it, lots of cream, lots of apple, lots of pear in terms of the notes. It's the grape is 100% Godello, which is a Galician Spanish grape, which we thought was lost for quite a while, but in the late 70s they sort of brought it back, and it is a very tasty wine. There's some curious sort of chemically notes to it, and I kind of liken that to some of the astringency you have with these characters. Mm-hmm. Like it's a pretty accurate kind of world. Like, it's a curious little place, their relationship particularly. So I went with this Frie. It is the grape is Godello. Can you see it? There you are.
Ooh.
There it is.
Almost Friday. But
yeah, true. That's very true, actually. So yeah, it's got nice creamy notes. It's got some great minerality. that minerality I liken to the kind of almost technical way they approach knocking down these leads. They it's sort of not flat, but they clearly are not emotionally engaged necessarily in the world that they're operating in. It is very satisfying, and it's the kind of wine that you need to sip because the tongue, the palate is so complex. It's going to slap you in the face with some fruit. It's going to slap you in the face with a little bit of sexiness. It's going to slap you in the face with that weird chemically thing that is not for everybody. God knows. I shouldn't say chemically, mineral thing. It's that minerality.
Well, it's funny because Riesling has that. You said we were in the same ballpark of thinking, and like Riesling is known to have this petroleum note to it, which often has, and so it is this weird complex chemically. It's in the right, if it's made well, it's in the right amount. You still enjoy it, but it is like when someone's like, "Oh, it's like petroleum," you're like, "Oh shit, it is." Yeah. Now I can't.
And depending on the bottle, that minerality, that petrolatum kind of note can be really acute in these wines. The grapes themselves are small cluster grapes, and they're pretty high sweetness, but it's kind of fantastic. It takes a little to love. It takes some energy to love.
Okay.
And I think with your piece here, the longer you sit with it, the more you fall in love with it. So, yeah.
That is true.
I want to try that wine.
Yeah.
All right. And then we always ask our guests to bring something, a comic they've been loving or have loved for a long time, or spotlight it and pair it with a beverage of their choice. So what you got for us, Frankie?
All right. So the comic I am currently reading that I am loving is The Life and Times of Martha Washington in the 21st Century by Frank Miller and Dave Gibbons. This is the complete, decades collection of their stories.
Right. Yeah.
It's incredible. It's so good. Fantastic satire and human drama. And it is very over the top, obviously. The satire is very heavy-handed, but in a very fun way. Like they're fighting a war against essentially a McDonald's stand-in called Fat Boy that runs like Texas, basically, through cattle farms, and they're trying to burn down the Amazon. It is so much fun. But it's got a lot going on in it. And so my drink is a non-alcoholic drink because it's dry January. It is a mocktail with elderflower liquor or elderflower tonic, a peach. It's San Pellegrino's peach.
Okay.
Not a cocktail, but it's like it's like along that line. It's not their limoncello, but it's close to it.
Yeah.
Peach limoncello, tart cherry juice, and a lime.
Fantastic.
So a lot of different flavors. Ultimately, the elderflower starts to kind of take over. That's a very potent flavor. The other things kind of balance it out, which is kind of what Martha Washington's all about. Like Martha Washington is the constant, and everything else floats around her.
Yeah,
it's so funny you mentioned that because I had a pitch around the time Dave and I met. I had a comic I sort of workshopped by myself called "The Founding Fucking," and it's basically this sort of founding mothers parallel where they turned into sort of superheroes, but also mostly assholes. But anyway.
Very cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I haven't thought of Martha Washington in quite some time. I read the OG, the first two limited series, and I know they've done yet more since then, but like I'd lost track of that. But so that is a single. They've released like an omnibus like collection of everything.
Yeah, and it's actually like really hard to find out. Dark Horse put it out. This one, the one I have, was like in 2017. I think that's the last printing they did. So like now when you go like online to try and buy it, it's
150
like,
bucks at least.
Yeah, it's over $100. I was lucky I saw it at half price books, and it was like $50, and it was also 20% off that day. So I'm like, oh, it's basically sticker price. Like I'm gonna get this. Like, now it's like good luck. I mean, anytime they make a good comic, they don't reprint it. It seems like some of those older ones, they get lost.
Yes. Well, and I was having this conversation about omnibuses right now with a group of comic people. And
Omnibay. I like Omnibay.
Omnibay. That's the that should be what eBay becomes, right? Omnibay.
There you go.
Like the omnipresent pay. But those oversized, thick, and they usually are hardcover. They're insanely heavy. You need to be sitting at a table to read the fuckers, and they don't print very many of them. And so they have this sort of they will be quote unquote out of print and pricier. You either buy them right away, and they know that they want to sell out, so they do a low print run. Not only are they a pain in the ass to they look great on your table, they look great on your shelf, but they're a pain in the ass to actually hold. And if you can't buy it day fucking one, you're basically, or year one at the very least, you're looking at unaffordable. It will not be affordable unless you get super lucky.
Actually, that's a sad state of it. I mean, and that's with a lot of those omnibay, omnibuses. They do that, and like you said, they're beautiful on my bookshelf. It's amazing. The problem though is you read it once and then you put it on your bookshelf and you're like, beautiful. Never gonna open it again.
To that end, Toshin, right before they sort of liquidated. I think they closed part of their outfit for a while, but everything was 75% off. And right before they closed, they did this deal with a bunch of the publishers, comic publishers, and they started doing a bunch of omnibus and omnibuses, smaller runs. And you could go into, there was one in the Grove, and you could find these,
which is right next to where we live.
Oh, which is these amazing sort of tomes that were, $20, retail were $600.
Yeah.
What? Oh, I would have had a field day.
It was like a going out of sale flash sale, it was everything must go. So it was
because their books they were doing a special I saw recently. They have a set of Marvel, the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, that are these 300 plus page books that kind of just highlight those eras and pick some comics from it. And they're all 300 plus bucks, and they're doing a sale. They're 50% off, and I was like, "Oh, cool, maybe I'll get." Nope, still too expensive. Even that 50% off is not a good enough deal.
Not for the writers of the world, as we know. He's so. Actually, on that note, after Who Killed Sarah Shaw, is there anything else in the works or lined up, or do you know what your next?
Oh, with this guy for sure.
I'll be honest. Actually, for a little bit, I was me and Adam were talking, and I was like, this might be it. This might be my last book, just because I've done it. I've done a bunch now, and for the most part, they've sold moderately okay to not good. It's in the world we live in, selling comics is difficult, and especially during COVID when you can't go to cons or anything.
Right.
You don't. There's only so much tweeting or posting on Blue Sky or posting on Instagram will get you traction wise, especially without having your foot in the door already as a well-known creator. That being said, that's one of those this too shall pass sort of things where it's all right, after that week of me feeling bad for myself, I was all right, fuck this. I'm going to write something so I have another project I'm working on with Marcus Jimenez, who runs Dauntless. It's a sci-fi fantasy series called Falling Stars. We did the first issue. We did a Kickstarter for it. And it was a black and white sort of trash can or ash can.
I was I like the term.
Ash can issue, just black and white and everything. But now we're going in and we're going to do it all in color, and we're going to release the first thing as a graphic novel. Okay. But that's a ways off. But the premise for that, it's another big story, so who knows how long it'll be, but the premise is basically a galactic empire. Think Star Wars, right? Has taken over this galaxy, and the princess of the leader is essentially a ticking time bomb. She has powers that she cannot control, and so she wants to run away, and the guy who is tasked with protecting her begrudgingly agrees to do it, but he doesn't know how long he can keep her under wraps and keep her in control.
Right.
Okay.
Awesome.
That's got some.
And
really
one
nice
issue
to it.
has
Yeah.
already been done.
One
you're
issue has already
basically-
been done. That's on Kickstarter. I'm sure maybe if you reach out to Marcus, he might have some. I have some for like cons and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
But it was a low, limited print run thing just to,
Right. Right.
And the
And
title
number
one more
2
time.
will come to Fallen Star.
Falling Stars. Yeah.
Falling Stars. Gotcha.
Plural.
Cool.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for being here, Frankie. For all you viewers that are still with us, and there are a handful of you, don't forget the Patreon. You can once again see it down below. It is Adam Markiewicz, the artist of Who Killed Sarah Shaw on Patreon. But if you Google Who Killed Sarah Shaw, there's only one. Thankfully, there's only one.
The SEOs
any
doing
killing
its work
of
for
someone
me.
named Sarah
It is.
Shaw.
It is.
So you will find that $1 gets you the entire shebang. So definitely look into that.
But feel free to go higher.
Yeah, please,
free
for,
to go
for
higher.
Adam.
For Adam. Do it for Adam. All right, folks. Thank you so much for being here, Frankie. We've really enjoyed talking to you for the first time, and
Absolutely.
we hope whatever your next thing is, even after this one, I will definitely be following along with the Patreon from this point on to the end of this story. And then, yeah, let us know when you got your next thing going, because this was great.
We're watching. We're watching.
Yeah.
Will do. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Good night, everybody.
Night,
We'll see you
guys.
next time. And wait, Heath. That sounds awesome. Thank you, Heath.
That sounds awesome.
And now signing off. See you next
All
time,
right, guys.
folks.